Hey guys, welcome back to Soul Kissed, the podcast. I really wanted to go dive deep today into the spiritual reasons of the coronavirus. And actually, what a lot of you probably don't know is that I myself was in China when the virus broke out. I didn't get anything. I quarantined myself for 2 weeks. When I came back, I was there for about 3 weeks, but I left right when things really started picking up and it really just became a worry for everyone. And when I was there, I became really obsessive about it. I became super paranoid. I was sanitizing everything. I was wearing a face mask all the time. It was all I thought about. I couldn't touch anything without worrying about it. And my friend was the exact opposite because she was just so numb to it and told herself, it's just hysteria and all these things. And we had very different ways of handling it, but we're both very mathematics and logistics of it all, or the health aspect. We're not dismissing that at all, and those things blend extremely well with spirituality, as does everything. But we were looking into why China? Why is it happening now? What is going on? And it's really interesting what we were able to come up with together. So the first thing I did when I was really paranoid about everything was looking up spiritual reasons and spiritual causes for lung diseases. I did this because I have a firm belief that there are metaphysical, emotional, deeper root causes for every single physical ailment, including disease. I believe that the collection of our thoughts, of our emotions, of our inner dialogue to ourselves, to others, the kind of energy that we generate to the world is directly manifested on or in our body. And what made me believe this was the fact that I had acne since I was in 6th grade and started puberty and had an issue with it all the way up until, I want to say I was 22, and I tried everything. My diet, I was eating healthy, I exercised, I had all the right requirements, and it didn't make sense why I had so much acne. There was no sense to it because nothing I did in a way that we can all understand matched up with it. I washed my face all the time, I did toner, I did moisturizer, I tried everything. I did everything except for Accutane because I don't believe in Accutane. That's a whole other thing. I don't believe in what it does to the body. And the one thing that fixed my acne was one day I looked up spiritual reasons for acne, and suddenly it felt like a light bulb moment, and as Oprah calls them, an aha moment. I had an aha moment and I was like, oh my God, this is me. I felt like I received a solution that actually sounded right and actually fitted in with my situation. And since that day where I read that article, since I had that aha moment, my acne cleared drastically. And yeah, I still get it, but I know that when I get it, it's because my soul, my energy, my frequency, the thoughts I'm giving, the words I'm saying to myself correlate with the energy that gives acne. So since then, I constantly look up for spiritual reasons for any sort of a physical anything. And I see since then, whenever I have something going on physically, I always will Google spiritual reasons for blank, spiritual reasons for back pain, spiritual reasons for a swollen ear, spiritual reasons for tinnitus, spiritual reasons for literally anything. And I always found it to ring some truth. And even if you want to be the most skeptical person in the world and not really believe in it, even just Googling it and reading and seeing what it has to say is really informative, and it really, in the very least, it just helps to be mindful about it and to think about it and to reflect, am I doing these things? And so we decided to do that in this case with the pneumonia and see why it's happening on not only a giant communal scale, but also for ourselves personally. Are we spiritually receptible for getting this kind of illness? This is when everything just started coming out, so we didn't understand exactly how we could get it or what or how bad it could be for us or anything like that, but we took it upon ourselves to see what it was there to tell us. And so we Google spiritual reasons for pneumonia because my biggest fear at the time, as is for a lot of people, that, it turns into something serious like pneumonia, and it mainly affects the lungs, right? It's a respiratory issue. So I looked up spiritual reasons for lung diseases, and I'm going to read you guys some of the things I picked up from elementsofhealth.com.au. Again, let me disclaim that I'm not saying that these are 100% scientific truths and that you should value this over a doctor's educated opinion. I'm not saying that at all, and it's just merely looking into the why, the spiritual why this is happening, why now, why China, why is it spreading now? And so let's dive into it. Depth about how. And I found this, our heart center. So basically the heart chakra, which has to do with your emotions, giving the general aspect of everything, and then a lot of the symptoms that we feel from these lung issues, specific cases, let's say, tied back to spiritual reasons. So if we're in a constant state of emotional hurt, a chronic one, a deeply rooted one that we haven't healed yet, a sense of giving up or a fear of living your life fully, and that the mucus that produces in a lot of these situations, so pneumonia is the best example because that's what it is, it's a bunch of fluid. It's to compensate for a physical manifestation of unshed tears that we've had from this trauma, from these unhealed wounds, which is to say that these lung problems can have deeper meanings and be tied to things that go way back in our lives that have caused us depression or grief and a fear of taking in life and a feeling of not being worthy to live your life fully. And so, on a personal level, when someone gets that, that's a whole other thing. But on a collective level, I couldn't help but think how we're doing and how we could have been hurting ourselves this whole time, how we've been unhealed this whole time, and how it could manifest in this sort of a way. And my mind immediately went into everything that we as a collective choose to do on a day-to-day basis. And so that has to do with just being unhappy, not listening to yourselves, not following your purpose, not following your passion, compensating. Again, we go through this whole theme in Soul Kiss of compensating your values for something that you don't believe in, and how it just creates unhappiness. And I genuinely see this wake-up call now through the quarantine. A bunch of people are saying that this is a beautiful time because we're finally able to sit back and relax and observe how our life isn't in the way that we would like it to be, or that we can do this differently and that we could be happier in this way. And just this whole pause that the world is seeing is giving everyone an opportunity to reevaluate their lives. And also it points at the theme of control and being controlled. And whenever you experience lung issues, it's a sign, it's kind of a wake-up call of saying like, hey, make sure you're doing the right things that make you happy. Make sure you're doing what you want, what makes you feel fulfilled. And this is a direct quote that I got from the article that really resonated with me. It says, when you cannot breathe, you are not enjoying life because you are living your life for someone else and always worrying what others think. And think about it on a personal level. It makes so much sense when we see that manifest. When people get anxiety attacks, they have difficulty breathing, they're breathing fast, they're trying to connect back to themselves, they're missing this force in them that allows them to make their own decisions, to be their own happiness. And it's interesting because later on as I was reading, it was making this connection of your lungs, the air that you breathe, being your umbilical cord for life. It gives us life, and we cannot go more than a couple of minutes without air. So when you have lung issues, that's for you to ask yourself, how am I disconnecting from myself? Again, back to the anxiety example. When you're breathing fast, it's almost like your body is responding in an immediate way, trying to get more air, trying to get back into connection with life, trying to be present again, trying to be happy again. When we're not happy, we're disconnected from life's source and from ourselves. Our lungs are our biggest connection to the outside world, right in front of the skin. And people don't know that so much, but the skin is actually the second biggest organ that gets in contact with the world. It's actually the lungs. And I thought it was interesting that this article brought up the connection between the skin and the lungs, because now what started as a problem with the lungs that people were observing has now manifested into an issue with the skin, where more people aren't touching each other anymore. We can't shake hands with a stranger. People are really reluctant now to even be hugging their friends or their family. My sister, when I was walking in the house, it was the first time I was seeing them in a while, and right when all of this started happening. It was last Friday, wow. And she was trying to spray me down with Lysol disinfectant spray. And I was like, Taya, I was just in a car and I'm here and I'm like, nothing's wrong. You see, so we're experiencing the extreme, and what I think is just a heavier manifestation of what we, especially America, has been experiencing already. You know, we have been so disconnected from each other. We haven't been intimate with each other in a long time, and this is just pushing more on that extreme, I believe. It's just a heavier physical manifestation. We're keeping our distance now. But at the same time, we see this yearning for life, this yearning back to things that matter. And we're seeing people reconnect again and realizing what has been important to them truly this whole time. So we're seeing, this is the first time even yesterday we were driving out on the street and we saw these two sisters playing on a trampoline, this other family riding their bikes down the street and just hanging out, and then other families walking through the forest. And that was the first time in a long time I've ever seen that, including in the summer. I genuinely felt like I was in the 90s again, or the early 2000s, with how many people were out and about and doing things that helped them feel grounded and understand the present moment and be here and have that all being that matters. Because as we learned from this, we don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't know what the next week brings. And now that people are finally understanding this, people are finally waking up and asking themselves, what matters to me? What's important to me? Do I even care about this job? Do I feel like I'm making a difference with this job? And why I'm grateful that the article made this connection, and why we're seeing this direct cause and effect relationship with the skin and the lungs is because they are connected. And that article went on to say that the skin, because it's the second largest organ that's in contact with the world, it also has a lot of the same issues as the lungs, a lot of the same spiritual roots and causes for issues with it. But it is on a more superficial level, just because the lungs are a more vital, more important system in our body, and the skin is very immediate, very upfront. It's one of the first things you see on a person. So after having this conversation, me and my friend were reading this on the train in Hong Kong on our way to this island with a Buddha temple and the giant statue of Buddha. And I was telling her that what really stuck with me was this whole idea of the unshed tears in the lungs, and how that takes the form of mucus in a physical manifestation when we aren't facing our pains, and we let the fear and the trauma that controlled our lives dictate our now, and have that create this fear that controls our every action or our every thought. I really resonated with it, and that gave her the idea of connecting it to this whole other aspect of spirituality with Taoism. And I looked into the 5 elements in Taoism. The 5 elements are wood, fire, earth, metal, water. If it helps, I'll give you a second to write it down. And you can kind of write it in a circular format. So start with wood at the top, then draw an arrow going clockwise to fire, then again to earth. Earth is at 5 o'clock now. If we were writing on a clock, it would be on 5 o'clock. And then drawing the arrow to metal, which would be at like 7. Then going up to water, and then that goes back at noon or midnight back to wood. So it goes all in this circular motion, and they feed into the other. So wood feeds into fire, fire feeds into earth, earth feeds into metal, metal feeds into water, and water feeds into wood. And each of these elements has a role in the whole yin-yang relationship, is assigned a gender, a season, a weather type, an energy type, planet color, body part, you name it. And what I found was interesting is that looking at these elements helped us understand the why. Why China? Why did it have to start in China? So each element out of these 5 elements in Taoism work to create balance within the world, right? We can't have too much fire, we can't have too much water, we can't have too much wood. We need a perfect balance in order for things to work correctly. And right now we're seeing throughout the world that the world isn't in balance. Things are completely out of whack. There is too much of one thing and too little of another thing, especially when it comes to climate change. There's deforestation, there's carbon emissions, there's pollutants, there's a lack of controlling certain chemicals and how many chemicals and what chemicals are able to be released out into the environment, with little concern for how it treats the environment. We're losing species. And much of that is due to our consumer behaviors. And as we all know, China is the biggest producer for anything and everything in the world. And it is also the biggest polluter on the earth. They face the worst issues for air quality, worst issues for water quality in terms of toxins. And there is no push or no hope in sight in the near future to help control that. So because there's too many factories burning fossil fuels and producing carbon emissions and all deforestation and too much construction and too much industrial energy, it creates this excess of fire energy, right? And we're losing a lot of earth energy because we're literally burning the earth away. We're cutting down trees. There are entire neighborhoods that maybe have like 2 trees, and a lot of the times people never leave these neighborhoods their entire lives. A lot of China's neighborhoods are designed to be where you really don't have to leave that neighborhood ever. And so people can go on a long time not really seeing true nature in a whole sense of entire ecosystems. So China has really lost this sense of value and priority for the earth. And you see it when you get there. When I was there, that was the first time I faced my direct results of my consumerism. I was suffocating with the air quality. I could hardly breathe. By the 4th day, my lungs and my throat started hurting, and you couldn't even see clear skies. The horizon was blurry. You can't really see through anything. So connecting this back with all of the Taoist elements, it became clear that China, out of the entire world, has the most excess fire energy. There's way too much that's scorching the earth there. And fire is a very masculine energy, which I think is interesting because this whole businessman mentality, this whole capitalist, produce, not really being mindful of the environment around them, just trying to make money and exasperate all of the resources on this planet. That's a super toxic masculine energy. And definitely more feminine energy is the exact opposite of nurturing and caring for, tending for those around us, whether they're sentient beings or not. And the energy type of fire is also very expansive. So this also fits in with China, trying to overproduce everything, trying to grow and grow and grow and build their economy and has one of the biggest population numbers out there. It's trying to stretch itself and it kind of has spread itself too thin as a result of that. And what also I think is interesting is that it says on this article, I'll post it in the bio, but it's called Tao Universe. They posted this article explaining all of the elements. And here it says that fire seeks pleasure and stimulation. And that's also, again, very masculine, very capitalist driven values of kind of overstimulation. We're trying to consume and buy things to feel happy and to fill this void. And everything is about pleasure and feeling good in that specific moment and not thinking more long-term of what's a smarter, more sustainable move for me, for my community, for my people around me, for my environment, for the animals and the plants around me. And it doesn't take into consideration this whole holistic view that we need to take in order to help fight climate change. It also says here that fire, its movement is upward. It is trying to ascend always. And with development, it's always about growth. And if you guys are looking at the wheel, the only element that stands between fire and metal is earth. So earth stands in between all of these more extreme sort of elements. Fire is very extreme, water can be very extreme, but earth is a stabilizer. Earth is grounded, and the earth energy is a complete balance, and all about seeking harmony, all about harmonizing between those two extremes. Since we're living in a time with governments that haven't been valuing the earth and haven't been trying to incorporate more feminine energy of being inclusive and considering feminine energy, considering the earth's needs, animals' needs, plants' needs, and ecosystems' needs in order for it to thrive, we're seeing a complete depletion in earth energy. And so this is where our theory came in. We felt like metal, the next following element, had to step in to sort of put out the fire and so that the earth can have time to heal, so that it can go back to restoring balance, creating harmony, being the stable rock that we need to feel secure, to feel safety, to feel. The whole reason why we haven't been feeling secure these days is because of a lack that we have in earth energy. Businesses, companies, schools, churches, everything have been closing down and not even knowing when they can promise for life to come back to normal, because things are that unstable. We've hurt the earth that much where we don't even know what next week looks like. So the metal energy is more feminine, and what we thought was super interesting is that the body system that is associated with metal is the respiratory system. And the yin organ, yin is the feminine energy, the yin organ assigned with metal are the lungs. And the bodily fluid assigned with metal is mucus. All pneumonia is, which is what can be contracted when we have coronavirus, is mucus. It's just a fluid that's collecting in our lungs. That's what makes it so dangerous. So we are seeing this excess in metal energy right now, this heavy amount of metal energy trying to put fluids in our lungs, trying to infiltrate our respiratory system in order to balance out this fire energy. And look at how much it's been working. Have you guys been seeing in the news lately what's been going on with the earth? The earth has already been in the best shape it has been in a long time. And she's already recovering from the kind of damage we've done environmentally. We see now that fishes are returning back into the canals in Venice. We are seeing that dolphins are coming back to, I forgot, it was either Japan or China. And China's skies are clearing up. And for the first time in I don't even want to know how many years, people in China are hearing birds for the first time. People in China are hearing birds chirping and singing and being present when they were so absent for so long. In opposition to fire's energy trying to be very expansive and all about growth and dominating and moving upward and ascending, the metal energy, it literally says on this page, contracting. And that is the word that we use when we talk about getting illnesses. We say, oh, I contracted coronavirus. Oh, I contracted pneumonia. How interesting is that? I thought that was so amazing. And I just noticed this now too. Look, the direction that metal is associated is the west. Amazing is this. For me, this there's no way that this can be a coincidence. I see such a bigger alignment of why this has happened. And how perfect is it that this is Taoism, a Chinese religion, for a Chinese, a Chinese born illness. I was going to say Chinese virus, and I didn't want to sound like Trump, so I shut my mouth. So this is what metal has come here to do. And here it says that metal's strengths are discipline, sharpness, and justice. And this is exactly what the metal energy has come here to do. We've been too caught up in this expansive go, kind of automatic of not thinking, or thinking that we don't have enough time to think about what really matters, what's important to us, getting a bigger picture, seeing what's happening around us of, oh shit, the earth needs our help. The earth has been crying for help for way too long. And she finally said no more and has declared a sort of sabbatical from the entire world so that she can have time to recover. It says here that metal seeks order and justice. while again, like we said, fire seeks pleasure and stimulation. So the metal seems to be doing the exact opposite. And that is why we're seeing so many governments declare national emergencies and shutdowns and cooperation from its citizens. We're getting this order, we're getting this justice, we're getting this discipline. We're getting that energy because the earth can't handle any more of the exact opposite, which was this fire energy. Opposite of the fire energy of moving upward. And like we said, expanding, always growing, always moving on to the next thing and pushing yourself, even if your body doesn't want to, even if your soul doesn't want to. In opposition to this, metal says, go inward. Instead of upward, go inward, go in yourself. What are we doing now? We're going into isolation. We're going into social distancing. We're being asked for the first time, probably in humanity, that the world is asking us to stay inside, to be with ourselves, to be home. This is the first time that the world is asking us to be with our families, and to stop seeking pleasure outdoors, and to stop seeking pleasure outside, going to restaurants, going to movie theaters, going to bars, consuming. The universe is asking, and the earth is demanding that we take this time of seclusion to start being mindful, to start looking at the whole picture, to start thinking holistically and acting holistically. And not only acting with things that honor our souls of, oh, like, what did I want to do my whole life? What is my dream that I completely forgot about because of my 9 to 5? Not just that, but thinking sustainably so that we can actually move towards that. Because we can't really plan for anything if the earth is going to deteriorate, you know? We also have to take in a holistic perspective of including the earth now when we make our plans. We have to ask, what's the most environmentally friendly option? Now we're starting to ask ourselves now, do I really need to go on that flight? Do I really need to create those carbon emissions and release that into the earth? That's being asked of us now. People are now getting better understandings of what is a necessity and what you've chosen to think is a necessity, but is really just seeking pleasure to avoid our bigger problems. I think this is all connected, of the environment going outside for pleasure and seeking excitement or temporary happiness, with us ignoring our purpose or ignoring our soul's truth or ignoring our soul's wants. Because when you're not happy with yourself, when you're not happy with the direction you're going in, when you've been lying to yourself and being someone who you're not for other people, so that other people can talk about you less or judge you less or whatever, you will go outside of yourself. You will go outside. You will go anywhere to avoid that confrontation. So we see a lot of people always, you go to your 9 to 5, you hate your job, you wait for the weekend, and what happens on the weekend? You go out to bars and you go out to restaurants and you get drunk and you get high and do all these things to try to forget about the very fact that you're not honoring your soul and you're not honoring what your soul wants to do. What is your dream? What is your purpose? What is it that you want to do out of your life? Do you want to bake pies and open up a bake shop and quit your career as a lawyer because your parents wanted you to do that, and 20 years later you're realizing you're not happy? Like, what is it that you're running away from? Because this is the perfect time to face that and to look into that. You have to ask yourself, am I really happy? Am I truly happy with my life, with what I've chosen for my life? This is what's being asked of us right now to think about. That and that's where all of our consumer habits are coming from anyways, right? We don't need most of the things that we've been getting all these years, but we think it's going to make us happy. We want to impress people we don't even like. We want our parents to think, oh, they made it. Oh, they did a good job. I did a good job raising them. We want validation to fill in some kind of void because we've been dishonoring ourselves, dishonoring our truth, and ignored a path that we so desperately wanted to choose on the inside. And so we have this void and we try to fill it with things we don't need. Does that Gucci belt actually make you happy? Does that BMW, Mercedes, whatever, really make you happy? Was it truly worth compensating every single thing you loved about yourself, or every single thing you love to do, or every single hobby? Was it really worth that? Are you content with that choice that you made? Once we quit the bullshit, be honest with ourselves, and do what it is that we so deeply want to do. That thing that you're afraid to think of right now, of what it is that you want to do, for me it's singing, that you always loved doing ever since you were a kid, or that if you had a whole day to do nothing, which is right now, what would you do that you keep on telling yourself right now as you're listening to this, no, I can't do that because this person said this, and no, I can't do that because it would be like this, and no, I can't do that because I'm this. That thing right now, that's the truth you're supposed to be holding for yourself. And once we honor that truth and that path and start acting for that, we no longer need these stupid things that we've been filling in our voids. And so people are going to consume less, and you need to stop going out so much less because you don't really need to escape from anything, because you're living the best possible reality that you could ever imagine for yourself. And you are completely 100% happy on your own without drinking, without drugs, without anything. And that is the energy, this metal energy, that's going to restore balance, lessening our fire energy, this lie that we told ourselves that we need to constantly expand and grow and push ourselves and have this extreme masculine energy, and understand the truth, which is that we can hold a balance of masculine and feminine energy. We need to start honoring the feminine energy. We need to start honoring ourselves and the things around us. And once we start doing that, the earth will recover, because our actions will line up with what's on the inside. The actions we've chosen have always lined up with what's been on our inside. And on our inside, we've been valuing way too much toxic masculinity of capitalism and buy all this shit and consumerism and production and Zara, dump those chemicals that your factory in China makes into that river where a whole village gets cancer. Do that because I want that top, because that's going to make me look cool. We shift from that negative toxic masculine energy, and naturally once we change ourselves on the inside and honor this femininity and honor the earth, our actions will align with that, and the earth will heal with that. And naturally, the next element that comes up after metal is going to be water. And water is an even more feminine energy. So the energy type for water is all about conserving. So this is exactly what's going to be happening now with the recession. We're going to have to start conserving our coins, saving money, being mindful of our purchases. The strengths of water are perseverance and strong will and having courage. And it's also a time of solitude and a time of deep mystery. So this is exactly the kind of natural flow that we're going to be moving in. So we come from this super exasperating times into now this time of stillness and looking inward, and then into a time of preserving everything and doing what we can to ensure that we stay safe, that we're doing what we can to keep life running in somewhat of a normal way for our sanity, to help ourselves feel better about the situation. The movement of water is downward, and the effects are depletion. And the development, instead of growth as it was for fire or harvesting as it was for metal, this is all about storing. So like I said, we're storing away our expenses, we're storing away our energy. We have to stay inside, we have to revitalize our energy. What I think is really interesting about this is that back in October, I listened to an astrology podcast that gave a forecast for 2020. And the astrologer, I'm going to tag him down in the bio because I forgot his name, but he was saying that 2020 is a year of recession. So this is the natural flow of 2020. This had to have happened in one way or another. And this is a perfect circumstance for a recession and for us to recede back into ourselves, recede back into home, conserve our coins, conserve our energy. And the best thing that we can do about it is embrace it. We shouldn't be afraid of this. We can't hide from this. It's impossible. Recession is a natural part of any cycle. And there's no way that any sort of a movement can only go upward. Things happen in cyclical patterns. So when there is growth, when there is expansion, recession is the next natural thing to happen. Don't be afraid, guys. Don't let fear get to you. Don't buy into these fear tactics that people are trying to tell you. Embrace the time for what it is now. Embrace these patterns and this part of a cycle that we've been told to shy away from, to run away from, to think that we can avoid it, and see what it can do for you and see how it can help. Live this moment fully in the present, accept the situation, and take it day by day. And that's all I have for you guys today. If this resonated with you, if you vibed with this on any sort of a level, please feel free to find me on Instagram, support me on Patreon, find me on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, even TikTok. I got on TikTok, and I'll be coming up with a new episode soon for you guys. But this was a really amazing episode, and I'm really glad that I was finally able to talk about this because it was really important and it really needed to be said. Let me know either by DMing me or commenting if you can how you guys felt about this. Stay safe, you guys. I wish the best for you and your loved ones, and rest up, meditate, journal, do yoga, do the things that you love, bake that pie. Everything is happening for a reason, and this is a blessing in disguise, I promise.